You begin in a quiet room of the mind, where everything is arranged in gentle order. Lines are straight. Shapes repeat. Nothing surprises you. Each sound arrives exactly when you expect it. Each step lands on familiar ground. There is a soft comfort in this predictability, like a lullaby made of repeating notes. Your thoughts move slowly here, calmly, in tidy circles. Humans love patterns. Your mind is built to find them in clouds, in music, in faces, in the rhythm of day and night. Patterns help you predict what comes next. They reduce effort. They save energy. When something repeats, your brain relaxes. It says, I know this. I have seen this before. And knowing feels like safety. Imagine a simple lock that opens with the same turn every time. No variation. No hesitation. Just one repeated motion. At first, it feels dependable. But if anyone watches long enough, they learn the motion too. The very thing that makes it comfortable also makes it vulnerable. You breathe slowly and consider this. Predictability is friendly to you and also friendly to anyone trying to guess your next move. In the world of information, patterns are like well-worn paths through grass. The more often they are used, the more visible they become. Messages that follow strict, repeated structure become easier to compress, easier to model, and if they guard something valuable, easier to break. But do not rush. There is no danger here. Only understanding unfolding like a blanket. Think of how you recognize a song after only a few notes. That is pattern recognition. Your mind fills the rest automatically. In science and security, machines can do something similar. If a system behaves the same way again and again, an observer can begin predicting its future from its past. Order, by itself, is not protection. Order is visibility. You walk now through a mental library at night. Shelves stretch upward into shadow. Every book is perfectly aligned. Titles follow a numbering system so strict that once you understand it, you can find any book without searching. It is efficient, elegant, useful. But if one book contains a secret, the neat catalog makes it easier, not harder, to find. Security begins to reveal its first paradox. What is easiest for friends to follow is often easiest for intruders too. You might think protection means building thicker walls, heavier doors, longer passwords. But in information science, strength often comes not from heaviness, but from uncertainty. Not from complexity alone, but from unpredictability. Your breathing slows as you picture a different room now. Less tidy. Papers gently scattered. Books not chaotic, but not perfectly ordered either. To you, it feels slightly harder to navigate. But to a stranger, it is much harder still. Only someone with context, with the right mental map, can move easily through it. This is your first soft meeting with the idea behind entropy, though we will not name it fully yet. For now, it is enough to feel it as variation, surprise, and possibility. Consider a simple message made of symbols. If the message repeats the same symbol again and again, it contains almost no surprise. After seeing the first few marks, you already know the rest. Your mind grows sleepy with certainty. But if the symbols vary, if each next mark could be one of many, your attention stays awake. The message carries more information because it could have been otherwise. Information lives inside surprise. You rest with that sentence for a moment, like a stone dropped into still water. In early communication systems, engineers noticed something gentle but powerful. Signals that were too regular became easy to imitate. Signals with richer variation were harder to fake. A repeating radio pulse can be copied. A richly varying one is harder to reproduce without knowing the hidden rules that shape it. Variation is not the enemy of clarity. When guided properly, it becomes its guardian. Picture footprints along a beach. If someone walks in a perfectly straight line, evenly spaced, each step identical, you can predict where the next print will appear. You can even step into their rhythm. But if the walker varies stride and direction, prediction becomes guesswork. Security cares deeply about guesswork. You are not thinking about danger, only about design. How systems are shaped. How messages travel. How secrets rest inside mathematics like pearls inside oysters. There is a gentle distinction forming now between order you can see and structure you understand. Something may look irregular on the surface yet follow deep rules underneath. Like waves. Like weather. Like your own heartbeat, never perfectly spaced, yet beautifully regulated. Surface disorder can hide deeper order. This is one of the quiet themes of modern information science. The safest systems are not random noise. They are structured unpredictability, patterns that cannot be predicted without special knowledge. To an outsider, they look irregular. To an insider, they are precise. You smile softly at the idea that confusion can be selective. Think of a shuffled deck of cards. To someone watching the shuffle, the order afterward feels patternless. But the shuffler knows it came from a process. If the shuffle is fair, no shortcut reveals the arrangement. You must see the cards themselves. Observation replaces prediction. And prediction is what attackers depend on. Your mind drifts to digital messages, streams of bits, zeros and ones, flowing like tiny lanterns through wires and air. If these bits follow simple repetition, compression becomes easy, but secrecy becomes fragile. If they are shaped by well-designed uncertainty, both compression and protection can grow stronger together. This surprises many people at first. Disorder helping efficiency. Uncertainty helping strength. But nature has always worked this way. Genetic diversity protects populations. Variation protects ecosystems. Monotony is delicate. Diversity is resilient. You feel the softness of that truth settle. Order is not wrong. Order is beautiful. You see it in crystals, in snowflakes, in spirals of shells. But when order becomes perfectly predictable, it becomes easy to model. And what is easy to model is easy to simulate. And what is easy to simulate is easier to defeat. So designers of secure systems do something subtle. They introduce measured unpredictability. Not chaos, never chaos, but surprise with boundaries. Like jazz within rhythm. Like wind within climate. You begin to sense that security is less like a wall and more like a fog, structured, present, protective, but hard to see through from the outside. Your thoughts slow further. You realize that comfort and safety are not always twins. A perfectly predictable world feels soothing, but it is also transparent. A slightly unpredictable world asks more of the observer and gives less away. Soon, you will give this measured unpredictability a name. Scientists measure it. Engineers calculate it. Cryptographers depend on it. Compression experts shape it into trees and intervals and codes. But for now, you simply rest with the feeling that surprise carries strength and repetition carries risk. You stand at the doorway between neat patterns and meaningful uncertainty, sensing that the next step of this journey will give a gentle number, a quiet measure, to the feeling of surprise itself. You settle into a softer space now, where nothing needs to be solved quickly. The air feels wide and patient. Here, you are invited not to calculate, but to notice. Not to memorize, but to sense. In this calm mental landscape, you are introduced to a word scientists use often, but rarely introduce gently. The word is entropy. For now, you do not treat it like a formula. You treat it like a feeling. Entropy is the feeling you have just before opening a sealed envelope. It is the pause before the reveal. The small suspension in your breath when many outcomes are possible and none has arrived yet. It is not confusion. It is possibility still unfolding. You hold the envelope in your imagination. If you already know what is inside, there is no surprise. No informational spark. But if the contents could be many different things, the opening becomes meaningful. The uncertainty itself carries value. Information, in a deep scientific sense, is connected to surprise. You walk slowly through this idea, step by step, like following lanterns along a dark garden path. If every lantern is identical and evenly spaced, your eyes stop paying attention. But if each lantern glows with a slightly different color and brightness, your awareness stays awake. Difference carries signal. Entropy is a way of measuring how much surprise is possible before the next symbol appears. Imagine you are listening to a drum that strikes once every second, always the same sound, always the same spacing. After a few beats, your mind predicts the rest. The future contains no mystery. This signal has very low entropy. It is orderly, yes, but informationally thin. Now imagine a drum that sometimes taps, sometimes pauses, sometimes doubles, sometimes rests. You cannot predict the next beat with certainty. Each moment carries newness. This signal has higher entropy. Not because it is chaotic, but because it contains more possible futures. You are beginning to see the shape of the idea. Scientists describe entropy as the average amount of surprise in a message source. Average surprise, that is a gentle phrase. Not maximum shock. Not constant confusion. Just the steady measure of how unexpected each next piece tends to be. Your mind likes this phrasing. It feels humane. Consider a jar filled with marbles. If every marble is blue, reaching in brings no surprise. The entropy is near zero. If half are blue and half are gold, each draw becomes uncertain. Entropy rises. If there are many colors in careful balance, uncertainty rises further still. More possible outcomes. More surprise per draw. More entropy. Notice that nothing here requires disorder in the messy sense. The marbles can be arranged neatly. the jar can be clean and still. Entropy is not about visual chaos. It is about outcome uncertainty. This distinction matters, and you let it settle gently. In information science, messages are built from symbols, letters, numbers, bits, signals. If one symbol appears almost all the time, the message becomes predictable. Entropy is low. If symbols appear with balanced likelihood, prediction becomes harder. Entropy is higher. Balanced possibility creates informational richness. You breathe slowly and imagine language itself. In English text, some letters appear far more often than others. The letter E is common. Z is rare. Because of this imbalance, written English has structure and redundancy. Skilled compression systems can take advantage of that structure to shorten messages without losing meaning. Entropy quietly guides how much compression is possible. If every letter appeared with equal probability, text would feel strange and difficult to read, but it would also be harder to compress. Less redundancy. More surprise. Higher entropy. You begin to feel how entropy connects not just to disorder, but to efficiency and limits. It sets boundaries. It tells you the minimum average number of bits needed to represent a message without losing information. Like a lower shoreline beneath which you cannot compress further without distortion. Entropy is a floor made of mathematics and possibility. But tonight, you do not stand on the floor. You float above it, observing peacefully. There is another soft analogy waiting for you. Think of weather forecasts. If a place has the same weather every day, prediction is trivial. Low entropy climate. If conditions vary widely and evenly, prediction becomes harder. High entropy climate. Forecasting becomes more informative because outcomes are less certain. Again, uncertainty creates informational value. You notice how this reshapes your intuition. You were taught that knowledge removes uncertainty. And it does. But before knowledge arrives, uncertainty is not emptiness, it is capacity. It is the space where information can land. A completely certain system cannot teach you anything new. A partially uncertain one can. Claude Shannon, whose presence you will meet more fully soon, shaped this insight into a precise measure. He asked a quiet question: how much information is produced, on average, by a source of messages? His answer linked probability and surprise through a logarithmic scale, gentle curves instead of straight lines, because surprise grows in a tapering way, not a linear one. But you do not need the equation tonight. You only need the intuition. Rare events carry more surprise than common ones. When the unlikely happens, information spikes like a bright star. When the expected happens, information flows like a calm stream. This is why secure systems value unpredictability. If an output can be guessed with high probability, it carries low entropy and low protection. If it cannot be guessed easily, entropy rises, and with it, defensive strength. You turn this idea slowly, like a smooth stone in your hand. Entropy is not the enemy of order. It is the measure of hidden possibility within structure. A well-designed secure signal looks irregular to outsiders but follows deep probability rules known to insiders. Entropy is tuned, not maximized blindly. Too little entropy invites prediction. Too much uncontrolled randomness destroys meaning. Between them lives crafted uncertainty, the sweet spot where information travels efficiently and secrets stay guarded. Your breathing is steady now. You imagine messages as constellations. Low entropy messages are like a sky with only one visible star, easy to describe, but not very informative. High entropy messages are like rich star fields, harder to summarize, but full of detail. Each additional possible point adds descriptive power. Entropy counts how many meaningful stars could appear before you look. You rest inside that sky for a moment. Soon, you will explore how real messages travel through imperfect channels, where noise gently disturbs every signal. You will see how entropy helps engineers design codes that survive distortion and still deliver truth. For now, you simply hold the feeling. Uncertainty is not ignorance, it is unopened information, waiting with quiet generosity. You float now into a wider universe, where nothing travels in perfect silence. Every message that moves through air, through wire, through light, carries a faint companion. A softness. A disturbance. A whisper layered on top of the signal. This whisper is called noise. Do not think of noise as harsh or violent. Tonight, noise is gentle. Like wind brushing tall grass. Like distant static on an old radio at low volume. It does not destroy meaning by default. It simply challenges it. It asks messages to become stronger, clearer, more thoughtfully shaped. You listen inward and imagine sending a message across a still lake. You drop a pebble of meaning into the water. Ripples move outward. But the lake is not perfectly still. A breeze touches the surface. Other ripples cross your own. The pattern arrives altered at the far shore. Not gone. Just changed. This is how all real communication behaves. When you speak, your voice moves through air that shifts in temperature and motion. When a phone sends data, electrons move through materials that are never perfectly uniform. When a spacecraft sends a signal home, radiation and cosmic interference brush against the transmission like invisible weather. Perfection belongs to equations. Communication belongs to reality. And reality is beautifully imperfect. You might think this is a problem first, but gently, you learn it is also a guide. Noise teaches designers how to build messages that can survive the journey. Without noise, there would be no need for clever encoding. No resilience. No graceful redundancy. Noise is the reason intelligence learns to be robust. Imagine whispering a secret across a long room filled with soft echoes. If you whisper only once, the message may blur. But if you repeat key words or structure the sentence with rhythm, the listener reconstructs meaning even if parts are lost. You already do this naturally in conversation. Human language evolved with noise in mind. We repeat. We gesture. We rephrase. We add context. We build error tolerance into everyday speech without noticing. Information theory simply makes this instinct precise and measurable. You walk slowly through a mental workshop now, where messages are crafted like small mechanical birds. Each one must fly across a windy canyon. If built too delicately, it falls. If built with thoughtful structure, it glides through turbulence. Encoding is the craft of building stronger wings. A raw message, just the bare symbols, is often fragile. Encoding wraps it in structure, adds pattern, adds checks, adds ways to detect when something went wrong along the path. Not by guessing wildly, but by embedding gentle self-awareness into the signal itself. Some codes add extra bits that act like tiny guardians. If a bit flips unexpectedly, the guardians notice. They raise a quiet flag. They say, "Something changed here." Error detection is like giving a message a sense of touch. Other codes go further. They not only detect errors but correct them. They include enough structured redundancy that the receiver can rebuild the damaged portion without asking for a resend. Like reconstructing a torn letter because enough sentences remain intact. Redundancy, which once sounded wasteful, becomes protective. You feel the paradox again. Repetition can weaken secrecy, but strengthen reliability. The purpose shapes the design. Compression removes redundancy when efficiency matters. Error correction adds redundancy when survival matters. Two opposite moves, guided by the same mathematics. You rest with this balance. In a noisy universe, meaning survives not by being rigid, but by being well-shaped, flexible, anticipatory, prepared for disturbance. Good encoding is like good architecture in earthquake zones, built not just for calm days, but for shaking ground. Claude Shannon showed that noise could be studied, measured, even planned for. He described channels, pathways for messages, each with a capacity. A maximum reliable rate of information flow. Exceed that rate, and errors multiply faster than correction can manage. Every path has a natural limit, like a bridge with a weight rating. But here is the soothing insight: if you stay within the channel's capacity and design your encoding wisely, you can make error rates as small as you wish. Not zero, but arbitrarily close. Reliability becomes a design choice, not a miracle. You breathe out slowly at that reassurance. Imagine sending lanterns down a foggy valley at night. If you send too many too quickly, their lights blur together. Signals overlap. Confusion grows. But if you space them properly and shape each light distinctly, they arrive recognizable, even through mist. Capacity is about spacing and distinction. Noise itself comes in many forms. Thermal noise from heat. Shot noise from tiny particle variations. Cosmic noise from the universe's background radiation. Human-made noise from other signals crossing paths. The world is full of gentle interference. Yet communication thrives anyway. This is one of the quiet triumphs of science, not eliminating imperfection, but designing through it. Radios, internet links, satellites, deep space probes all speak across noise using layered encoding strategies that expect disturbance and plan around it. Expectation becomes strength. You notice how similar this feels to emotional resilience. You do not build a calm life by removing all uncertainty. You build inner encoding, perspective, repetition of values, supportive structure so that when noise enters, meaning remains intact. The analogy settles warmly. In digital systems, even the smallest unit, the bit, travels with vulnerability. A 0 might arrive as a 1. A 1 might soften into a 0. Encoding schemes group bits into patterns that make such flips detectable. Like spelling a word with enough context that one smudged letter does not erase the sentence. Context is armor for meaning. You walk now beside a flowing stream of bits, each wearing a small patterned cloak, parity bits, checksums, codes within codes. Not heavy armor. Just enough structure to remain recognizable after the journey. The stream is not silent, but it is understandable. Soon, you will see how entropy, the measure of surprise, helps determine the most efficient possible encoding for a given source. How probability shapes code length. How common symbols earn shorter representations, and rare symbols accept longer ones. Efficiency will meet uncertainty directly. For now, you simply rest in the knowledge that noise is not failure. Noise is environment. Messages are living travelers. Encoding is how they dress for the weather. And meaning, when carefully prepared, can cross even imperfect distances and still arrive softly, clearly, and almost whole. And in the next quiet step, you will meet the thinker who first measured how much surprise a message can carry through that imperfect air. You walk now along a quiet corridor of thought, softly lit, where ideas sit like instruments waiting to be played. At the far end, near a chalkboard filled with gentle symbols, stands a calm and curious mind, a builder of bridges between uncertainty and understanding. His name is Claude Shannon. You do not meet him as a stern mathematician, but as a patient listener to signals. A watcher of patterns. A gardener of ideas. He looks at messages the way a naturalist looks at forests, noticing structure, variation, and hidden rules beneath apparent complexity. You sit nearby as if on a wooden bench, unhurried. Before his work, people sent messages, built codes, and compressed signals mostly through intuition and craft. Useful methods existed, but there was no deep measuring stick for information itself. No universal way to answer the question, how much information is in a message? Shannon asked this question gently and changed the landscape by answering it. Imagine you hold two boxes. One contains a coin that always lands heads. The other contains a fair coin, heads or tails with equal chance. If you open the first box and flip, the result teaches you nothing new. You already knew. If you open the second and flip, the result carries surprise. Shannon realized that information is tied to how uncertain the outcome is before you see it. You feel how natural that sounds. He described information not by meaning, emotion, or importance, but by uncertainty reduced. When many outcomes are possible and one becomes known, information appears. Like fog lifting to reveal a single visible path. He needed a unit for this, a small, simple container of resolved uncertainty. He called it the bit. Short for binary digit. A bit is the amount of information gained when you learn the answer to a yes or no question with equal chances. One fair coin flip. One bit. You imagine each bit as a tiny lantern turning on in darkness. Not a floodlight. Just a point of clarity. Messages become strings of lanterns, each reducing uncertainty step by step, until the full shape becomes visible. This is soothing information not as overload, but as gradual illumination. But Shannon went further. He noticed that not all events are equally surprising. Learning that the sun rose this morning carries almost no information, it was nearly certain. Learning that snow fell in a desert carries much more, it was unlikely. So information per event must depend on probability. Rare events carry more information when they occur. Common events carry less. The relationship is smooth and curved, not straight. Shannon expressed it with a logarithm, a gentle mathematical curve that grows steadily but not wildly. You do not need the formula. You feel the shape. If something has probability 1/2, it gives 1 bit of information. If probability is 1/4, it gives 2 bits. 1/8, 3 bits. Each halving adds 1 bit of surprise. Like descending levels into a cave of decreasing likelihood. Depth equals surprise. Now you see why logarithms appear. They count how many times you must have possibility space to reach the event. Each halving is a yes or no narrowing. Each narrowing, 1 bit. You breathe slowly, letting the staircase image settle. Shannon then combined these surprises across all possible symbols from a source. Not just one event, but the average surprise across many outcomes. He weighted each by its probability and added them together. The result was a single number, the entropy of the source. Average surprise per symbol. Entropy, here, is not heat or disorder, but informational uncertainty. A calm, precise measure of how unpredictable a message source is. How much newness it produces on average with each symbol. You picture a language where one letter appears almost always. Entropy is low. Another language where letters appear evenly. Entropy is higher. The second language needs more bits per letter to encode without loss, because each letter carries more surprise. Entropy becomes a compression limit. This was Shannon's quiet revelation. Entropy sets the theoretical minimum average number of bits needed to encode symbols from a source without losing information. And yet, nothing became colder. Only clearer. You imagine Shannon juggling, which he often did, balls moving in patterned unpredictability. Juggling itself is a dance between order and variation. Too rigid, and it fails. Too chaotic, and it collapses. Sustained motion lives in balanced uncertainty. His mathematics feels like that, alive, rhythmic. He showed that efficient coding assigns shorter representations to more probable symbols and longer ones to rare symbols. This feels intuitive now, but it needed proof. Later methods, like Huffman coding and arithmetic coding, grow directly from this insight. Probability shapes code length. You rest your thoughts and notice how this echoes earlier feelings. Common paths are short, rare paths are long. Like trails through grass. Like branches in a tree. Like breaths between pauses. The universe seems to like this pattern. Shannon also described the noisy channel theorem, a deep reassurance. It says that for any channel with noise, there exists a coding method that allows reliable communication at any rate below capacity, with error made arbitrarily small. Not eliminated, but softened toward zero. You feel the comfort in that promise. With wise encoding, messages can cross imperfect worlds and still arrive trustworthy. Structure defeats disturbance when designed with probability in mind. This is not force. It is harmony with limits. You look again at the lanterns, bits lighting one by one, and realize that entropy tells you how many lanterns you must expect to light, on average, to reveal each new symbol. Not by guesswork. By law of probability. Measurement replaces intuition, and intuition becomes sharper because of it. Soon, you will walk into specific coding methods shaped by these principles: trees of decision, narrowing number intervals, probability-guided paths. You will see entropy not just measured, but used. For now, you sit beside the quiet chalkboard and feel surprise become countable, uncertainty become navigable, and information becomes something you can almost hold like a small warm light, wondering how such measured surprise will soon become the guardian of secrets. You settle into a darker, softer landscape now, not frightening, just deeper, like the sky a little after sunset when shapes are still visible but edges blur. This is where secrets prefer to live. Not in perfect darkness, and not in full light, but in uncertainty. You notice how your mind tries to predict what comes next. It is always doing this, finishing melodies, anticipating footsteps, expecting the next word in a familiar phrase. Prediction is one of your brain's most beautiful talents. It saves energy. It speeds understanding. It turns chaos into story. But tonight you discover something important. What helps understanding can weaken protection. If something can be predicted, it can be guessed. If it can be guessed, it can be unlocked. Imagine a door that opens with a simple rhythm: tap, tap, tap every time. No variation. No delay. Anyone who watches long enough learns the rhythm. The door is not broken. It is simply predictable. Its weakness is not in its strength, but in its sameness. Security, in the language of information, depends on limiting successful prediction. You walk slowly past a row of glowing safes in your imagination. Each safe has a different kind of lock. One uses a repeating 3-number code. One uses your birthday. One uses a truly random sequence drawn fresh each time. From the outside, they may look similar. But mathematically, they are worlds apart. The repeating code has low uncertainty. The birthday code has structured uncertainty drawn from a small personal pattern space. The truly random code has high entropy, wide possibility, flat probability, minimal predictability. Only the last one resists patient guessing. Randomness, here, does not mean mess. It means evenly spread possibility. No favorite outcome. No weighted habit. Each allowed value stands with equal chance, like identical doors in a long hallway with no markings. You feel how hard prediction becomes in such a hallway. In cryptography, the science of protecting messages, randomness is not decoration. It is foundation. Keys must be generated with unpredictability. Initialization values must vary. Nonces, numbers used once, must truly be used once and chosen without pattern. Because attackers are patient listeners. They do not break strong systems by force alone. They observe. They measure. They collect outputs and search for structure. If any bias appears, any small tilt towards certain outcomes, prediction gains a foothold. And a foothold is enough to begin climbing. You breathe slowly and imagine flipping a fair coin versus a weighted coin. The fair coin gives no long-term advantage to a guesser. The weighted coin quietly leaks information through bias. Even a small bias, repeated many times, becomes visible like a faint trail through grass. Security fails gradually before it fails completely. This is why high-quality randomness sources matter. Computers, by nature, are deterministic. Left alone, they follow strict rules and produce predictable sequences. To create randomness, they must draw from physical processes, timing variations, thermal noise, quantum effects, or carefully designed cryptographic generators seeded with unpredictable input. Randomness must be harvested, not assumed. You picture a still pond fed by underground springs. If the springs are truly irregular, the surface ripples never repeat exactly. But if the water is pumped by a machine with a fixed rhythm, patterns emerge. An observer can learn the rhythm and predict the ripples. Good security listens for hidden pumps. There is a gentle distinction now forming in your understanding between randomness and pseudo-randomness. True randomness comes from unpredictable physical processes. Pseudo-randomness comes from algorithms that stretch a small random seed into a long sequence that looks random to anyone who does not know the seed. If the generator is well designed, the illusion is strong enough for protection. This is one of the quiet miracles of modern cryptography. With a short, truly random seed and a strong generator, you can produce vast oceans of unpredictable-looking data. To outsiders, it is fog. To insiders with the seed, it is a map. Shared secret, shared clarity. But randomness alone is not enough. It must be used correctly. If a random key is reused too many times, patterns emerge across encrypted messages. If random choices are accidentally biased by poor implementation, tiny leaks appear. Security is not only about strong randomness, but careful handling. Like medicine, dosage and timing matter. Consider encrypted messages as locked boxes traveling across a noisy world. The encryption algorithm is the lock design. The key is the specific cut pattern. If two boxes use the same key pattern repeatedly, subtle correlations can appear in how scratches and marks line up. Attackers study these correlations like archaeologists. Variation prevents alignment. This is why many secure systems mix randomness into each session: fresh keys, fresh initialization values, fresh salts and password hashing. A salt is a random addition that makes even identical passwords produce different stored results. Without salt, shared patterns reveal shared secrets. A pinch of randomness breaks dangerous symmetry. You smile softly at how small additions of uncertainty can create large gains in safety. Entropy returns here as a quiet measure. When security experts ask how strong a key is, they often speak in bits of entropy. Not length alone, but unpredictability. A 20-character password made of predictable words may have less entropy than a shorter string of truly random symbols. Length is visible. Entropy is deeper. You imagine two paths through a forest. One is long but straight. The other is shorter but twists unpredictably. For someone trying to intercept you, the twisting path is harder to anticipate, even if it covers less distance. Security measures twists, not just miles. There is also a calm warning in this landscape. Humans are not good randomness generators. When asked to invent random sequences, people avoid repetition too much, creating patterns of non-pattern. We alternate too neatly. We distribute too evenly in small samples. True randomness includes clumps and coincidences we instinctively avoid. Your intuition prefers fairness. Randomness prefers truth. So secure systems do not ask humans to be random. They ask physics or well-tested algorithms instead. They measure entropy sources. They test output distributions. They remain humble before unpredictability. You feel respect growing where fear once lived. Randomness is not chaos breaking order. It is possibility protecting value. It is the mathematical way of saying, you cannot know this in advance. And in security, that sentence is a shield. Soon, you will see how entropy measured surprise also guides how messages are compressed efficiently, not just protected. The same probability knowledge that strengthens secrecy also shortens representation. Efficiency and security will meet in the same quiet mathematics. For now, you rest inside the protective fog of unpredictability, sensing that the next step of the journey will show how long messages gently fold themselves smaller without losing a single whisper of meaning. You rest now beside a long ribbon of symbols stretching beyond the horizon, letters, bits, signals, soft pulses of meaning laid end to end. At first glance, the ribbon feels heavy with repetition. Familiar shapes appear again and again, like footsteps following the same path through sand. You are not asked to erase anything, only to fold. Compression, in its most gentle form, is the art of folding information so it takes less space while keeping its full meaning. Not tearing pages out of a book, but closing the book carefully so it fits into your pocket. You hold this difference with care. Compression is not destruction. It is thoughtful rearrangement. Imagine you are packing for a long, quiet journey. If you toss everything loosely into a suitcase, air fills the gaps. Space is wasted between objects. But if you place each item with awareness, socks inside shoes, shirts rolled instead of folded, the same belongings fit into a smaller space without loss. Redundancy is like trapped air. Compression releases it. Messages, especially human language, images, and measured data, contain patterns and repetition. Certain symbols appear more often. Certain sequences travel together like close friends. If you treat every symbol as equally likely and equally long, you ignore this structure and carry unnecessary weight. Entropy coding begins by listening to frequency. You sit beside a stream of text and notice that some letters step into the water again and again, while others appear only rarely on the bank. If each letter is stored using the same number of bits, the common letters consume more total space than they truly need. It is like charging the same toll for bicycles and caravans. A wiser system charges by size and frequency. Common symbols get shorter representations. Rare symbols accept longer ones. The average length shrinks. The message grows lighter overall, even though every symbol remains perfectly recoverable. Probability becomes a tailor. This idea flows directly from the measure of entropy you met earlier. Entropy tells you the theoretical lower limit, the smallest possible average number of bits per symbol without losing information. It is the tightest careful fold nature allows. You cannot fold smaller than truth permits. If a source produces highly predictable symbols, entropy is low, and strong compression is possible. If a source produces very unpredictable symbols, entropy is high, and compression gains are limited. Surprise resists folding. Predictability welcomes it. You feel this intuitively. A page that says the same word 1,000 times can be compressed dramatically. A page of richly varied poetry compresses far less. Not because poetry is inefficient, but because it carries more surprise per word. Information density sets packing limits. There are two broad families of compression. Lossy compression allows small, Controlled losses of detail, like smoothing tiny color variations in an image your eyes barely notice. Lossless compression allows no loss at all. Every bit must return exactly as it was. Entropy coding lives in the lossless world. It does not blur. It does not approximate. It transforms representation, like rewriting a sentence in shorthand and later expanding it perfectly back to full form. The surface changes. The meaning does not. You enter now into a quiet forest of choices. It is not dense or dark, but softly structured, a place where every path divides with purpose. Above you rise gentle branching forms, like trees made not of wood, but of decisions. Each fork and each branch represents a question with only two possible answers: left or right, 0 or 1, yes or no. This is a coding tree, a Huffman tree. You walk slowly, unhurried, noticing that some leaves are very close to the root, while others are farther away at the ends of longer branching paths. Nothing here is random. The shape grows from probability, like a plant grows toward light. You remember what you learned earlier: common symbols deserve shorter codes. Rare symbols can accept longer ones. Huffman coding is one of the most elegant ways to make that idea real. Imagine you are assigning knock patterns on a door to represent letters. If a letter appears very often, you give it a short pattern, perhaps just 1 or 2 knocks. If a letter appears rarely, you assign a longer pattern, more knocks, more spacing. Over many messages, the average time to transmit a letter drops. Frequent meanings get shorter journeys. Huffman coding does exactly this with bits instead of knocks. It builds a binary tree where each symbol sits at a leaf. The path from the root to that leaf becomes the symbol's code. Left steps might mean 0. Right steps might mean 1. The sequence of steps becomes the bit pattern. A path becomes a code word. You sit for a moment at the base of this imagined tree and watch how it grows. It begins with a list of symbols and their probabilities, how often each appears in the message source. The rare symbols start as light seeds. The common symbols as heavier ones. The builder, the algorithm, always joins the 2 least probable symbols first, pairing them under a shared branch. Their probabilities add. They become a small subtree. Then it repeats, again joining the 2 lightest remaining nodes, step by step, until only 1 root remains. Small chances join first. Big chances wait near the top. This simple rule produces a near-optimal prefix code, a code where no code word is the prefix of another. That property matters deeply. It means when you read a stream of bits, you never become confused about where one symbol ends and the next begins. No code word hides inside another. You feel the comfort of that design. Clean boundaries. No ambiguity. Like sentences that always end with a soft bell. Let yourself picture decoding. You start at the root and read bits 1 at a time, walking left for 0 and right for 1. When you reach a leaf, you stop, you have found the symbol. Then you return to the root and begin again for the next bits. Decoding becomes a gentle walk. Notice what this avoids. There is no need for separators between symbols. No commas. No gaps. The tree structure itself provides separation. The path determines the meaning, and the leaf confirms completion. Structure replaces punctuation. You walk a short path, just 2 steps, and reach a common symbol. Then you walk a longer path, perhaps 6 steps, and reach a rare one. Over a long message, most walks are short, because most symbols are common. The average path length becomes small. The forest optimizes your journey. This is how Huffman coding approaches the entropy limit you learned about before. It does not always reach the exact theoretical minimum average length, but it often comes very close. Especially when symbol probabilities are stable and known. Probability shapes geography. There is something soothing about how organic the result feels. No symbol is favored by opinion. Only by frequency. Usage sculpts the tree the way wind sculpts sand. The shape is earned, not imposed. You run your hand along the bark of one branching decision and feel how binary choices, yes or no, can build rich expressive systems. Every digital message, at its deepest layer, is built from such forks. Tiny decisions, chained together, forming meaning. Complexity from simple splits. Huffman coding is widely used inside larger compression systems, image formats, audio encoders, file compressors. Often it appears as the final stage, after other methods have exposed useful probability patterns. Once symbol frequencies are known, the Huffman tree quietly assigns efficient codes. It is a finisher, a careful packer of revealed structure. But there is a gentle limitation here too, and you observe it without judgment. Huffman coding assigns whole numbers of bits to each symbol. 1 bit, 2 bits, 3 bits, never fractions. But entropy, the theoretical limit, can include fractional average bits per symbol. Reality is continuous. Codes are discrete. Because of this, Huffman coding can sit slightly above the entropy floor. Very close, but not perfectly touching. Later, you will encounter a method that closes this gap further by coding whole messages into fractional number ranges instead of individual symbol paths. Another narrowing is coming. Still, Huffman trees remain beautiful for their clarity and speed. They are easy to build, easy to decode, fast in practice, like well-marked trails through a probability forest. No heavy arithmetic required. Just branching and walking. Efficiency with light footsteps. You imagine the tree at night now, each leaf glowing softly with its symbol, closer leaves brighter because they are visited more often. The glow pattern itself reveals probability. A living map of usage. Frequency becomes light. There is also adaptability. Some systems rebuild their Huffman trees as data flows, adjusting to changing symbol frequencies. The forest reshapes itself slowly, paths lengthening or shortening as usage shifts. A breathing structure. Coding that listens while it works. You feel how this mirrors learning in the mind. Habits you use often become quick paths. Rare thoughts require longer mental routes. Your own memory is a kind of probability-shaped tree, optimized by repetition and relevance. Your brain is a living Huffman forest. Soon, you will move from trees to number lines, from branching paths to narrowing intervals, where entire messages compress into single precise fractions guided by probability. The geometry will change from vertical branches to horizontal ranges. Paths will become segments. You step now out of the forest of branches and into an open, level space, a long, quiet number line stretching from 0 to 1. No trees here. No forks. Only a smooth continuum, like a calm horizon. This is where arithmetic coding lives, not in discrete paths, but in narrowing ranges. You are not choosing a code for each symbol anymore. You are shaping one shared interval for the entire message. Let your thoughts slow enough to feel how unusual and elegant this is. Imagine the full line from 0 to 1 as a soft strip of light. This strip represents all possible messages that could be formed from a known set of symbols and probabilities. Every possible message corresponds to some subsegment of this line. Your task, the encoder's task, is simply to keep narrowing this segment as each symbol arrives. Not step by step down a tree, but squeeze by squeeze along a line. You begin with the whole interval. Wide, calm, full of possibility. Then you divide it into portions based on symbol probabilities. If one symbol occurs half the time, it gets half the interval. If another occurs 1/4 of the time, it gets 1/4 of the interval. Larger probability, wider slice. Probability becomes length. You look at the first symbol of the message. Suppose it is a common one. You move into its slice, perhaps the lower half of the interval. The rest of the line fades away. It no longer matters. Only this selected subrange remains alive. Meaning is now location. Then comes the next symbol. You take your current subrange and divide it again using the same probability proportions. Not across the whole 0 to 1 line now, only within your current slice. Again, you choose the portion matching the next symbol. The interval narrows further. Each symbol is a gentle squeeze. You continue like this, symbol after symbol, each time subdividing the current interval and keeping only the relevant piece. The range becomes smaller, more precise, more committed. Like focusing a lens. Like tuning a string. The message becomes a destination zone. At the end, you are left with a very small interval, perhaps unimaginably small, that uniquely represents the entire message sequence. Any number inside that interval can serve as the code. Just one number. One carefully chosen fraction between 0 and 1. A whole story becomes a coordinate. You rest with that idea. A message not as a path, but as a point inside a shrinking corridor of probability. Decoding reverses the process. The decoder starts with the same probability model and the transmitted number. It sees which slice the number falls into that reveals the first symbol. Then it zooms into that slice and repeats. Zoom and reveal. Zoom and reveal. Notice how smooth this feels compared to discrete code words. Arithmetic coding is not limited to whole numbers of bits per symbol. It effectively allows fractional average bit lengths. Over long messages, it can approach the entropy limit even more closely than Huffman coding. It wastes almost no space between theory and practice. You imagine pouring sand into a container shaped exactly like the message's probability structure. Huffman coding uses small fixed scoops, whole bits, sometimes leaving tiny air gaps. Arithmetic coding pours continuously, filling curves and corners. Continuous packing. There is something deeply calming about this continuity. No abrupt jumps. Only progressive refinement. Each symbol adds detail by shrinking uncertainty space. You are not adding blocks, you are tightening bounds. Uncertainty becomes precision. Of course, real computers cannot store infinitely precise fractions. So practical arithmetic coders output bits gradually as the interval settles into stable regions, when leading digits stop changing despite further narrowing. They emit those bits and rescale the interval, continuing the squeeze. Precision flows outward in drops. Engineers later developed closely related methods, like range coding, that achieved the same effect with more numerical stability and speed. Different tools, same philosophy, encode the whole message as a probability-guided interval. One narrowing, many implementations. You notice how this connects beautifully to entropy. Entropy measures average surprise per symbol. Arithmetic coding translates that surprise directly into interval shrinkage. Highly surprising symbols carve away large portions of remaining space. Predictable symbols trim only a little. Surprise controls contraction. Think of walking toward a door across a field. If each clue about direction is very informative, you adjust course sharply, big narrowing. If each clue is weak, you adjust slightly, small narrowing. Arithmetic coding turns clues into geometric reduction. Information becomes distance removed. There is also adaptability here. Like adaptive Huffman methods, arithmetic coding can update probabilities as it reads symbols. Early parts of the message teach the model. Later parts benefit from better estimates. The interval divisions evolve with experience. Learning reshapes the ruler. You might wonder softly whether such precise compression threatens security, whether making data maximally compact also makes it easier to attack. The answer is gentle and subtle. Compression removes redundancy, which can reduce certain attack surfaces, but it does not create secrecy by itself. Density is not encryption. Compressed data often looks random because patterns are minimized, but its structure is still reversible without a secret. Two siblings, not twins. Still, they cooperate. Compressing before encrypting is common practice. It reduces size and removes obvious patterns before secrecy is applied. The message becomes both lighter and less structurally revealing. First fold, then fog. You sit beside the narrowing interval now, almost a point, and feel how a long stream of symbols has settled into a tiny numeric harbor. Nothing lost. Nothing guessed. Only probability translated into position. Meaning becomes placement. In the next step of your journey, you will return fully to security, to keys, uncertainty, and protection, seeing how entropy is measured not just for compression efficiency, but for defensive strength. You will measure how hard guessing truly is. And you will ask a quiet question: how much uncertainty is enough to keep a secret safe? You settle into a quiet chamber now, filled with locked boxes, digital vaults, and subtle paths of possibility. The air here is soft, almost tangible, vibrating with unspoken potential. Every message you imagined folded and compressed in earlier chapters now comes to rest behind doors of varying strength. The locks are all different, but the principle is the same: unpredictability is your ally. You take a key in your hand, not a physical one, but a mental representation. Each key is unique, chosen from a vast set of possibilities. You do not see its full pattern at first, you only sense the space it occupies among countless others. The key's power is proportional to the size of that space. This is entropy at work. The more unpredictable a key is, the more difficult it becomes for anyone to guess. A short, patterned key is like a trail with footprints visible in soft mud anyone who watches long enough can follow. A truly random key, selected from a vast space, leaves no trace, no hint, no map. Every attempt to guess meets the resistance of uncertainty itself. You breathe slowly and feel the calmness this creates. Security is not built by force, but by possibility. Consider the act of guessing a password. A human mind tends to create patterns, favorite words, dates, or sequences that feel random but are anything but. These patterns shrink the space of possibilities, lowering entropy, making prediction easier. In contrast, a string chosen randomly from a large symbol set spreads across a vast landscape. No assumptions give an advantage. Here, unpredictability is a shield. You now visualize keys as lanterns floating in an endless night. Some are clustered, familiar shapes you recognize immediately. Others drift far apart, unpredictable in placement. Only those who possess the exact location can reach the correct lantern and unlock the hidden meaning. All others see light but cannot trace it to its source. Entropy is the distance between discovery and knowledge. This principle guides cryptography. Symmetric keys, public and private pairs, session keys all rely on generating sequences that resist prediction. Even tiny biases in generation can be exploited. Security is fragile where certainty creeps in, and it flourishes where randomness is embraced. You sense a rhythm here, one that mirrors life itself. Patterns are comforting, yes, but predictability exposes vulnerability. Strength resides not in avoidance of noise, but in alignment with uncertainty. Keys do more than unlock. They define the very landscape of potential outcomes. A strong key ensures that the number of guesses required to discover it is astronomically large. Each guess is a step into a foggy valley. The more unpredictable the key, the thicker the fog, the safer the treasure. You think of encryption algorithms now as careful choreography. They transform plaintext into ciphertext using keys as guides. Every possible key leads to a unique transformation. Without the correct key, ciphertext appears indistinguishable from randomness. The patterns that might hint at meaning are hidden beneath layers of mathematical shrouds. Randomness is not chaos, it is controlled, measured, and purposeful. Entropy also governs how long a key must be. A 128-bit key has an astronomically larger set of possibilities than a 64-bit key. Doubling key length does not merely double strength, it multiplies it exponentially. Each additional bit of entropy becomes another guardian standing between your secret and the unknown. You feel the calm power of such scaling. Strength does not rush, it accumulates quietly, relentlessly, mathematically. But keys alone are not enough. Their use must respect unpredictability at every step. Nonces, initialization vectors, salts all introduce freshness and prevent repeated patterns. Reusing keys or neglecting randomness leaks information. The guardian weakens if vigilance fades. You notice how this mirrors earlier lessons about noise and encoding. Communication, compression, and security all rely on probability awareness. Structure, when combined with unpredictability, becomes powerful. Repetition and predictability, however small, become vulnerability. Even the act of measuring entropy, calculating uncertainty, is itself a form of meditation. You do not simply guess. You quantify. You respect limits. You prepare. Like observing a river before crossing, or feeling the strength of a branch before resting upon it. In practice, encryption algorithms exploit this principle at scale. Messages are converted into streams of bits, keys dictate transformations, and randomness ensures that no observer can reconstruct the original without access to the secret. Predictable inputs, weak keys, or repeated patterns invite attack. Uncertainty guards quietly, like a sentinel. You walk slowly among imagined digital vaults. You feel the comforting symmetry. The same mathematics that measures uncertainty for compression now guards secrets. Entropy has dual lives: efficiency and protection. Probability is the common language. You pause and watch a virtual key float toward a lock. It fits perfectly, guided by precise design. Another key, equally shaped but from a different random draw, fails. The difference is invisible, almost poetic. Success depends on exact alignment, on the unpredictable meeting the structured. The lock and the unknown move together in harmony. You rest with this understanding: uncertainty is no longer a threat, but a source of strength. The more we respect and measure it, the more secure our systems become. Security is the calm confidence of probability well applied. Soon, you will settle into the mathematics of mystery itself, where disorder, measurement, and controlled unpredictability intertwine. You will drift into the paradox that uncertainty can be gentle, reliable, and even beautiful. And as your mind begins to wander toward that quiet horizon, you sense that entropy is not just protection or efficiency, but a lens through which the universe itself whispers its secrets. Now, you arrive at a calm plateau, the final stretch of this journey through entropy, randomness, and coded messages. The air is soft, and the horizon stretches wide, unbroken. Here, all the threads you have followed, Shannon's bits, the flickering lanterns of information, Huffman trees, narrowing intervals, and protective randomness converge into a single, meditative landscape. You feel the paradox gently: disorder, which once seemed chaotic or threatening, is in fact the source of structure, protection, and efficiency. The very unpredictability that makes secrets safe and compressions tight also allows understanding to grow without forcing it. Randomness, carefully guided, becomes a form of order. Take a moment to watch the interplay of patterns and uncertainty. Like sunlight streaming through leaves, the rays appear irregular, yet they form a harmonious mosaic on the forest floor. Each shadow and glint is part of a subtle, measurable dance, a choreography of chance that is both orderly and surprising. You recall the trees you walked through, the intervals you followed, and the keys you held. Each was a different lens on probability, a different expression of the same fundamental principle: the world communicates and protects itself through uncertainty. Compression, encryption, and even the flow of information in nature are guided by this invisible mathematics. Entropy becomes almost a gentle heartbeat. It measures surprise, guides packing, secures secrets, and illuminates paths through the dark. It is not cold or abstract, but living and intimate, a quiet companion to your curiosity. In its presence, your mind can rest. You no longer need to fight unpredictability or control every outcome. Instead, you observe, trust, and let it guide you. The universe itself seems to speak in possibilities. A star's light flickers in patterns that encode its history. A whisper of thermal noise contains hidden fluctuations that seed randomness. Even the air you breathe carries tiny variations, imperceptible, yet real. Everywhere, structure and uncertainty intertwine. You let your thoughts float into these patterns. You notice how repetition has been softened, how surprises are measured, and how every system, communication, encryption, compression balances predictability with freedom. The duality of order and disorder is no longer tension, but harmony. Your mind begins to drift, carried by the rhythm of this gentle mathematics. You feel the comfort in knowing that uncertainty is not danger, but a framework. That probability, surprise, and entropy are not barriers, but bridges guiding information safely, efficiently, and elegantly from one point to another. And as your eyes grow heavy, you rest within this quiet understanding that the patterns you have traced, the intervals you have followed, and the keys you have held are all whispers of the same principle. Disorder, when measured and respected, can be serene. The mathematics of uncertainty is a soft place to lie down, a gentle guide for both knowledge and imagination. Somewhere beyond the horizon, possibilities stretch endlessly. You feel their presence, neither forcing action nor demanding clarity, simply existing in harmonious probability. And in that space, you drift, letting the measured unpredictability of the universe carry you towards sleep, where the mind can fold information, protect secrets, and rest inside meaningful randomness until morning arrives.